Hello, my fellow sovereign nodes. Before we get started today, I wanted to make a quick mention about the one-on-one healing sessions that are being offered by members of the decentralized consciousness community. There are currently 7 of us that are offering these amazing sessions. I've done multiple with each member and have found that in each case, they have met me with their specific, unique talents exactly where I needed and what I needed help with. If this at all resonates with you, sparks your curiosity, check out bitcoin-consciousness.com/sessions and reach out to one of us. Thanks for listening and enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Decentralized Consciousness Podcast. Today on the podcast, I have returning Tali. Tali, welcome back to the podcast. I'm super excited to be talking with you today.
Thank you, Caleb. I'm very excited to talk to you about our subject today.
Yeah. So you reached out to me because the last time that we spoke about conscious parenting, and in particular, we spoke about homeschooling. So if anybody is interested in hearing that episode, I'm going to link it in the show notes. And, or you can just go back into the podcast episodes from, it was over a year ago now that we had that conversation. I can't believe it's been that long already.
Yeah.
And yeah, we talked about your adventure in homeschooling. I can't remember. Do you have 3 kids?
I have 4.
4 kids. Yeah. So you homeschooled all 4 of your kids, and that was quite an inspiring adventure. But today we are going to talk about things more related to energy and Bitcoin consciousness. So I'm excited. To begin, let's just start off by talking about your journey in spiritual growth and where you are today.
Oh, that's a big question. Let's see.
Yeah, it can go many directions.
It can go many directions. Well, I just came back from a women's retreat that I had designed to bring Bitcoiner women together so that we can raise our vibration together. And I'll just start from there because it's something that is very top of mind for me, that I have to be really careful who I talk about it with, because it's almost like when you talk about Bitcoin with non-coiners, they don't really understand even the verbiage that you're using, and they look at you like you're crazy. So when we talk about energy and vibration and frequency, for a lot of people, that's just woo-woo talk. At best, it's just not real. At worst, you're a witch. So I just felt like we needed to create a safe space for Bitcoiners, in particular women who tend to be very sensitive to energy, to come together and have a safe space to really fill up on the inside. Because we see as Bitcoiners a lot of faults in the monetary system, which cascades into all the different areas of your life: food, pharma, energy, environment, you name it. And we see darkness where a lot of people don't see darkness. And so for me anyway, when I start talking to people about Bitcoin, immediately I have to, in order to explain the value of Bitcoin, I end up having to talk about the fiat system. And then it feels like a downward energy spiral for me. And then I have to be so mindful to speak from a positive place rather than a dark place. And so I created a retreat for that purpose, so that we can lift each other up and turn our attention inward, because it is very easy to keep our eyes outward looking at what's going on. Every time there's a politician making a statement, we have all these people sending out tweets and Twitter, and it's really easy to be pulled to a lower frequency and then speak out of frustration and out of anger rather than out of positivity and hope. So, yeah, so that's where I am right now, just trying to balance that, sharing the value of Bitcoin and staying positive at the same time, even as I speak about the faults of the monetary system and how it overflows into all areas of people's lives.
Yeah, what we have been discussing a lot in the Bitcoin consciousness community group is we're seeing a lot more people coming to Bitcoin through higher vibration and through spirituality. So we're hearing more and more about people who are feeling energetically inspired, whether it be by their spirit teams, by guides, or by synchronicities. They feel like they're being called to Bitcoin from this higher vibration, which you didn't hear so much about in the past. It used to be for a lot of people, my story included, it was about the gains. It was like, you come for the money and you stay for the revolution. You come for investment, and now we're hearing and we're hearing more and more, and a lot of it is coming from women who are like, they're like, they see a dead end everywhere with all of this stuff on the outside, like you said, with the politicians, with the bad news, with the negativity, and they see this different system that presents such a different perspective, and it's so refreshing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's one caveat I would like to mention that probably a lot of people, even in this space, would disagree with, is when we talk about prosperity and high vibration and high frequency, I don't necessarily believe that there is only one road to that plane. So, for example, if we talk about food, right? There's a lot of people talking about the carnivore diet, the keto diet, the paleo diet, and the necessity to eat healthy food for optimal health. The necessity to take supplements even, or to buy grass-fed meat, which is all quite pricey for someone who might not have the extra income to pay for all of that. And I just want to state that I think it's possible through elevated emotional states, which also then leads to the higher frequency and high vibration, that it is possible for us to change the energetic, what is it called? The complementary energy that we put into these things to have a higher result without the recommended stuff. So for example, I was listening to a lecture by an energy teacher, and she was talking about how important it was to put good intentions in your food before you put it into your body. And she was teaching about healing and touch and all that stuff. Well, in the back of the workshop was a man who was very disheveled, and you can clearly see that he's probably homeless, very dirty, very smelly, and kind of yellow, sallow skin. He comes up to her at the end of the workshop and he says, "I don't have money to improve my diet. I'm eating out of the garbage dump in the back of a fast food restaurant. What do you recommend I do? Because I can't implement all of these recommendations." And she said, "Make one change. When you eat, whatever it is that you're putting into your body, you bless it. And just do that, because you can do that without extra money. You can do that without first finding a job and then cleaning yourself up and all that stuff." She was like, "This is the one thing you can do. You elevate your energy when you put the food into your body." And so that's what so he left and she went on her tour. And 1 year later, she went back to that city for the same presentation, for the same workshop. And another man walked up to her. And then she recognized him as the man from the previous year, and he looked healthy. His skin was good. And she's like, "Oh, congratulations. You must have gotten yourself all cleaned up and moved off the street and everything." And he said, "No, I did exactly what you told me. I ate blessed food. I blessed my food before I ate it. She says, what, you're still homeless? He goes, yeah, you're still eating out of the dumps in the back of McDonald's. And he said, yeah, but he made that one change. And so I think we have to be really careful as Bitcoiners to make the assumption that there is only one way to this sort of utopia that we're thinking about, because a lot of Bitcoiners put a lot of hope in what it can fix in the world, and that's all true and good. But I don't necessarily believe that you cannot be equally blessed if you stay in the fiat system, if you have the right level, not the right level, that's wrong, a high level of frequency and vibration in your day-to-day living. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're referring to is what we kind of describe as centralization. So centralization being as there is only one idea or model for the way that you should think and act and do things. And the whole concept of decentralized consciousness is, it is at its core and a group of people who are committed to embodying their highest selves, knowing that the highest self is a fluid being, knowing that the highest self is going to live exactly the way that you described, which is being able to be flexible and experience things by just letting them go. So in the process of healing, for instance, when we run into things that we don't enjoy, instead of creating programs around them in order to avoid them, we are able to live in flow and figure out how it is we not forcibly fix them, but the intention instead is to bless bless the bad experience for what it is, understanding that the universe gave us that that event, be it good or bad, gave us that event as something for us to experience. And if we take it for what it is, then, and not hold on to it, then we can continue to live in flow. And that's the whole concept behind decentralization, because we have the sovereignty to experience whatever life we want to live. So if your highest self feels good doing something, let's say you're in some other crypto space, if you're in Ethereum or something, but that is what your highest self is telling you is good for you and makes sense for you, then by all means, that's we believe in holding neutral space for that. And in doing so, we process our own triggers and we help one another heal. I think the difference, like with Ethereum or any of these what are dubbed shit coins, is the intention behind them is very, very fiat, right? So when we say that, we basically mean that the intention is basically to make a bunch of money. And there's really nothing else beyond that. However, there are a lot of Ethereum people who would also disagree. So when they describe it, they think that it's genuinely something good, this decentralized computer, and there's all of these really amazing sounding narratives, really, and it sounds good. So it's like we can't discredit the intention of these people who believe they're doing the right thing. So this is like the decentralized approach that I think you're kind of getting at.
Yeah, and also everybody's life is a journey, and I think it's very presumptuous of us to tell other people, even through good intentions, Bitcoin educators, to say, well, where you are at is substandard. So, for example, I'll use religion as an example. When I was in my 20s, I really, really clung on to Christianity because that was what I needed in that moment in my life. And it was what I needed to have that sense of security, have a sense of black and white, something to hold on to, something to anchor me. And then you grow from there. And so if we, as spiritual, I don't know, students, I guess, we look back to that stage and go, oh, I'm so glad I'm not there anymore. And then we look at other Christians and somewhat judge them for where they are because, you're being taught shame and you're being taught sin and all that stuff. Then we're not respecting that that's the part of their journey that they need to walk. And another example is so Scott and I recently went to a homeschooling convention, and we're, of course, Bitcoin educators, and we want to tell people about the failing monetary system and the value of Bitcoin. And so I was walking the floor and chatting with the other vendors. And one of them he's a very enthusiastic, friendly young man. And he was very open to the conversation about cryptocurrency. And I started to tell him about the value of Bitcoin, the fact that we have limited numbers of Bitcoin available, that, the limited supply, and that there's no CEO, and that it's decentralized, et cetera, et cetera. He was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what Luna is. And I'm looking at him like, okay, tell me more. And he said, we have limited supply and we have no CEO. And he was absolutely convinced that he was right. And there was no room for discussion about the differences or the contrast between the two. In his mind, he was absolutely right. And he felt with all conviction that he was doing the right thing. And so all I can do is walk away and say, good luck. I hope, everything works out for you. And I think we just have to remember, like what you're saying about decentralized consciousness, is everybody has their own journey to walk. We can't judge whether their journey is right or wrong, or in that space and time, whether they're in the right place or not, because they have a higher power that's directing that. And so all we can do is say, well, here's another option, and then kind of step back. But I think that's a really fine line to walk, to find, to know when to speak and when to keep quiet, when to respect and when to challenge,
Totally. And another interesting way to look at that is, what if we as Bitcoiners are the ones that are quote unquote wrong? Wrong is obviously kind of a loaded term here,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
what if Luna is the currency of the future? I mean, and obviously we have, as Bitcoiners, have read a lot about this, heard, had a lot of discussions about this on
Mm-hmm.
podcasts. I mean, this Bitcoin and Bitcoin only sentiment. I
Mm-hmm.
think for most Bitcoin maximalists, it makes sense for many, many, many rational reasons. But again, what if that total conviction is completely wrong? I think we still need to be open to that possibility, and open to this possibility of the pain that might come from being completely wrong. And I think the more that we can be open to that, then the less pride that we have, and
Yeah.
it will allow us to kind of come together and open more possibilities for us to heal. And whatever the solution is, ideally you just want something that's going to elevate humanity. Ideally we just want a money that is fair. I mean, that's really, if you can connect our base intentions, you're the Luna guy you spoke to, and you as a Bitcoiner, the base intention is we just want a system that's fair. We just want a system that respects our sovereignty, one that we can use in this higher vibration version of Earth. And whether or not we're right in the path of getting there, it actually doesn't matter so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Like you were saying, being fluid and going with the flow. But again, that is such a fine line because we don't want to be passive either. It's kind of like I was listening to one of Sama's interviews, and he was talking about how manifestation is imagination plus action. And I think it's sometimes easy for us to slip into visualization only. And so, yeah, just walking that fine line between letting things unfold and challenging the status quo, and that's where intuition comes in, and moving your attention further down your body into the gut versus sitting in your head. I think that's a good reminder for us all, I think.
Yeah. So, what has it been like for you making these changes on a day to day and trying to follow your body versus the being more identified with the emotions and the stories?
Yeah, so Scott and I, we started Free Market Kids, and as anybody who has ever tried to start a business would know, every day is an emotional roller coaster. And it's been really challenging for me personally to stay in high vibration when what your eyes can see are just challenges. You have, supply chain challenges, you have sales, you have all the finance side stuff, and just to stay in that frame of mind forces you to either back away from this project that we're trying to do or really challenge ourselves to build up our character. Because when you try to start a company, there's a, I don't know about other people, but for us, leaving a traditional job, that involved a lot of fear, and it's a very huge risk we're taking. And there's no bravery without fear, right? So facing that fear literally every single day, sometimes by the hour, because of what's going on in the business, that that's the most practical application that I am forced to perform every single day when it comes to this. And I don't think that I would be challenged in this way if we had stayed in a corporate job, because then our income is very steady. You get a paycheck, and then every 2 weeks, and then you get a bonus at the end of the year. It's very easy to plan things out and to have some kind of expectation of what might happen. But when you're an entrepreneur, every single day is different. So, like, another example is I just went on the retreat, and my purpose for the retreat was to elevate everyone's um, frequency and vibration through, we were doing meditations, and we were going into nature, and we were doing, sharing circles and things like that. But the most challenging part of the retreat for me personally was to stay positive in the face of things not going the way I had planned. So, and especially when the uncertainty has a lot of physical implications. So, for another example, I'll just be like more and more specific for you. So, at one point, I couldn't find my passport. And that's the number one fear of international travelers, right? Like, that is your most prized possession. You do not lose your passport. Well, I couldn't find my passport. And it led me through such an emotional roller coaster. And to stay anchored when I was like, how am I going to get home without my passport? Oh my gosh, that was such a huge challenge. But on the other side of it, coming out of it, I realized that that was the most growth opportunity for me, because that was the biggest fear. The biggest fear I had traveling was losing my passport. And to face that, and then I just remember standing on the side of the airport waiting to hear my fate. Like, am I going to be able to board the airplane without my passport? And I was standing there, and my gut was in a knot, and my heart was pounding, and I was thinking, okay, what do I need to do to keep my vibration high? Because I want things to go my way. I don't want to have the worst case scenario, right now playing out. I want it to be the best case scenario. And so I took out my phone, and I forced myself to look at the photos from the retreat, the beautiful beach that we were so blessed to be located at, the animals that we came in contact with, and the people that I spent time with. Like, man, it was hard. It was really hard to keeping that higher vibration. So that's how it's playing out for me right now is, well, aside from the retreat, just the running of a startup, day to day emotional management is what I call it. Because you gotta have elevated emotions, and it is very, very difficult when you're facing a lot of challenges with your physical eyes are seeing, even though in your inner knowing, you know that the highest good is playing out. But man, when you're faced with those challenges with your eyeballs, it's tough.
Hmm. Yeah, it can
Hmm.
be hard to not identify with them.
Hmm.
So how did that story end up playing out with the passport?
So I was granted access. Well, okay, I was granted permission to travel home because I travel with the same airline, and it's a round trip ticket, and it was a return leg, and they had already scanned in my passport. So they had in the system, but they needed special permission from border control to allow me to board the airplane. And that took the longest because they were waiting for official permission. Once that got through, I was like, oh, thank God, I'm gonna go home. Well, after that, I went through 8 more checkpoints, and every single checkpoint was another pretty unfriendly person going, "Where's your passport?" I was like, "I don't have it." And like, "Well, you can't pass if you don't have your passport." I'm like, "But I got special permission." Well, I don't know what that is, so 8 more checkpoints. And every single checkpoint, it was waiting for them to check their system to make sure I'm in their body scan. I mean, like just long lines and waiting. And I got pulled into the back room at immigration. Um, yeah, it was such a nerve-wracking experience, and it took me all day, but I got home. So, and then guess what? Then I found my passport
Uh,
in the zipper in
oh,
the zipper of the lining of the inside of my suitcase. You know the where it zips the lining to the shell of the suitcase.
hmm
So
hmm
I had been so careful with my passport that I hid it from myself. But I'm like, okay, universe, what is it? Why did this
Oh
thing play out
no.
this way? So
Right.
I mean, it's the best case scenario. I got home, I found my passport, it wasn't missing, nobody stole it. And I'm thinking back, I'm like, what lesson was I supposed to learn from this? Because I'm going to write. I haven't. I'm still processing all the experiences from the retreat, and people are asking me like for pictures and tell me about the retreat. I'm like, I'm processing. There were so many lessons that were so important for me personally that I'm gonna have to write out this whole big thing. Like I'm gonna call it a journal or a diary, but it was really more reflections of what I was forced to learn through this experience that ended up being for my highest good. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so amazing how once you physically went through the fear of not having your passport, playing
Yeah.
it out and seeing what it was all about,
Mhm.
effectively you're able to release the fear, but because you know what's going to happen, right? So
Right.
you're not afraid anymore. You understand it, and so the
Right.
second that fear went away, then your
Mhm.
passport showed up.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's like it's almost like the universe hid it from me so that I can go through this experience and face my greatest travel fear.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that reminds me because you were also talking about the satiating our fears by going to a 40-hour work week, um, and and with starting a business, because I also have this, because I have an online business that
Mhm.
I struggle a lot to approach with a higher consciousness. And
Mhm.
in recent weeks, I'm becoming more open to possibilities and more open to playing around with taking some action.
Mhm.
But what I keep running into is that I still am taking a lot of actions out of fear. There's still like this initial intention when I began the business. It's like, okay, this is the fear that I have. It was really a loaded set of fears. It was like, I am now becoming afraid of losing my individual sovereignty. So, and I want more control. I want more say over my own life because I am afraid that I'm not going to be able to do what I want to do when I want to be able to do it. I'm afraid that I'm not going to have enough money so that I can live the life that I want to live. And the only way that I saw being able to satiate those fears was to build a business. And so I started this business with kind of it was a lower intention, really, for lack of a better term. I wanted to try to make these fears go away. And so even with starting a business, even though, like you said, it was kind of an act of bravery, because there are the fears of, yeah, I mean, inconsistent income, don't actually know. I mean, it's basically, nobody spells this out. If this process of beginning a business and making it successful, if it was easy, then it wouldn't be a process. It would just be a part of life. It'd be as easy as breathing, you know? And, um, and I think maybe someday that will be the case. And if you look back at early stages of America, the modern society of going to work for somebody else, really the idea of going to school and finding a job working for somebody else, it wasn't really a reality. There were jobs, but it was more on a gig basis. It was more like, I'm gonna make sure that I have enough human capital for my society to be able to earn money when I need it. But it's ultimately up to me. It's not like I'm going to find an employer and count on them. So even back then, when we're a very, very free nation, it was more aligned. There was a lot less fear around where money is going to come from.
Right.
And so what I'm finding now is that I'm still playing. When I started the business, I'm still playing to these fiat-minded fears of being afraid of not having money, of being afraid of, like, how am I going to pay for rent? How am I going to pay for groceries? What steps do I need to take so that I can make sure that I can feel comfortable? Because I feel uncomfortable if I don't have money. It's like this terrifying sense of not being able to make money. So how do we, like your passport situation, how do we approach this, you think? How do we approach not having to play out these fears of losing the passport in the case of financial fears?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I'll just say what I try to do personally. So meditation is really important, obviously, to be able to go to a place where all possibilities are available. But that's easier said than done, right? Because if you're meditating and you're worried about paying your bills, how do you raise that vibration? Well, I've heard a couple of things. So I used to listen to Abraham Hicks a lot, and she always said, when the
Me too.
momentum is so strong and you're going toward the negativity downhill, there are two things you can do. One is go pet your dog or a cat, whatever you have, or go smell some flowers, go look outside, look at the blue sky, and you're just trying to stop the momentum. And then the other is just take a nap, because when you sleep, the momentum stops. And all you can do is inch your way back toward neutral, because that you can't go from scared to positive. That's an impossible leap. And I think fear is there almost as a necessity sometimes to force us to do something brave. So one of the things that I was talking to Scott about last night was, um, when we're backed into a corner, that's when we become the most creative, because we must survive, right? If we're somewhat comfy, we'll be somewhat creative. But when your back is to the corner and you need a solution, in all of human history, like the greatest inventions, right? The bravest men showed up when there was the greatest um, danger or the greatest need for the hero. And so fear, I don't think, is necessarily a bad thing. It forces you to come out of your shell and come out of your comfort zone. And then you just literally take baby steps. All you can do is keep putting one foot in front of the other. Independence and self-sovereignty, I think is what our soul recognizes as our true state. And so if we interpret our desire for it as fear of dependency, then that's our interpretation. but we can flip it to the other side and just think it's just our soul's desire for independence or for self-sovereignty. I think that sounds better. So I'll give you another example. So we just came back from BitBlock Boom, and it was a really huge investment of time and money and energy for us. And there were moments when I felt like when I felt like I wanted to calculate everything in terms of dollars, but the value of an experience exceeds those dollars. And if we keep our eye on the dollars, you start to have anxiety and fear and what about this? What about this? But if you keep your eye on the opportunity, you literally have to force yourself to sit back, deep breath, and just say, the path will be lit for me as long as I'm looking for the path with the intention to see it. So whether you believe in the universe or your spiritual guides or your angels or Jesus or whatever it is that you believe in, you ask for their guidance, and you have to keep just taking one baby step forward and one baby step forward, and your feelings will go up and down, like Abraham Hicks says. Don't believe your feelings, or your feelings are just your soul telling you that you're not aligned with the way the universe is looking at things. And so if you're fearful, it's because you're not recognizing that it's actually, this thing is happening for your good. So, slow down, take deep breaths, and keep moving forward. And some other teacher I heard, I think it was Joyce Meyer, she said, do it afraid. Do it afraid, do it afraid. Do it very scared. You feel the feeling and you do it anyway. And then, so entrepreneurs, I sincerely believe, after entering this experience, that you have to grow. Like the success of your business will reflect your self-growth or self-development. Like you cannot grow past your character. I heard that somewhere, and I'm living it out, and I'm like, yeah, that's so true, because it is so much easier for us to turn around and go, let's go find a fiat job. because that would be so much easier, a lot less scary, and then we'll just buy Bitcoin on the side and it'll be fine. But that's not what we're called to do. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, and there, I think you have uncovered something that's very interesting there, because in both cases of going out and finding a job or starting a business, you are still playing to fear, but the way that you're playing to fear when it comes to going out and finding a job is like, you go there, you find the job, you get comfortable, and the fear goes away. And I guess that's kind of the end. But then the possibility when you become an entrepreneur, or let's say maybe you don't want to become an entrepreneur, maybe you just want to do something for someone else that you genuinely enjoy, something that genuinely inspires you. You want to work in the Bitcoin space. When you make the decision to face the fear of the uncertainty of entrepreneurship or the uncertainty of going into a completely new industry, the idea of the bravery, and taking those steps into bravery with a higher intention, with the intention to face fears, to understand them. It is in a roundabout way, a way for us to connect more deeply to our higher selves than the first option, which is to just go satisfy the fear. Don't ever, shove it away in the corner. I'm safe now. I don't, I don't have to worry about this anymore because I have a job, kind of thing. Whereas if it's, if you're going out and so there is like this aspect of bravery and forcibly going against the fear in order to experience it. And like in the case of your passport, that just happened. It wasn't like you intentionally like threw your passport into the ditch on the side of the road, right. Like, okay, let's go for the ride and try this out. But sometimes that's how the universe will have us play out our fear. So we can intentionally make the decision. If it's like, I don't know how I am going to approach this fear. I don't know how to heal it. I can't seem to let it go. That would be the most efficient way to do it, would be to do it through healing, through meditation, through just allowing those vibrations to go through you instead of identifying them. But if you find that you cannot do that, then yeah, the act of bravery, I guess, is kind of the next easiest tool for approaching it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it all depends on your perspective, right? If you, like, for example, if somebody's hurting you or somebody's causing you pain and their intention is to hurt you, that's a very different experience than somebody causing you pain because they're trying to help you, right? So if you fall down somewhere and somebody's got to reset your bones, that's going to hurt like heck, but they're trying to help you. But if somebody's breaking your bones on purpose to hurt you, that's a whole nother interpretation, and we'll have a different bodily response and mental emotional response to the same experience. So perspective is so important. But again, it's hard for us to look at a situation clearly when our emotions or when our heart is pounding and our gut is in a knot. So like what Abraham Hicks said, you can't make a giant leap from one side to the other. You just make baby steps. You just take baby steps. If you can go from despair to anger, that's a step in the right direction. If you can go from anger to sadness, that's actually a step in the right direction. So, baby steps. And if you can get to neutral, then you have a better chance of getting to the other side, the positive side. So.
Yeah. So can you tell us now a little bit about your retreat?
Yeah. So it was a 5-day retreat. And again, my goal was to get Bitcoiner women together because we have similar values to begin with, and we see the same challenges in the world. And it's really easy, I think, to get bogged down into like a negativity mire. And so my goal was to get them together in the same space to build fellowship, because it's also really hard for us to build true friendships and connections if we're just interacting online, or if we see each other at a conference and we're passing each other in the hall and it's like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. So I really wanted dedicated time. I wanted to build deep friendships, but also I wanted us to be awed by something. Like I wanted us to step outside ourselves, to be awed by nature. That's why we went to the beach, to be awed by, for in our case, we wanted to be awed by like the pyramids. We went to the Mayan pyramids, and just to realize the possibilities that are out there, and how big the universe and the energy out there is, and the possibilities. So we went to a private beach where there were no hotels, no restaurants, no grocery stores. It was like, it was almost no people. And so we were there, and it was just us and the ocean. And we went out to the Flamingo Lagoon, and we were guided by a Mayan descendant, a direct descendant. And so he was able to bring us very deep into the habitat where the flamingos lived. And that was amazing. We also had a very unexpected opportunity to come in contact with a baby rescue jaguar, and just to be that close to the animal, to be able to touch it and interact with it, and then to feel the easy power, like the powers that was just so easily accessible to this baby animal. Like, I respected it so much. I petted a few times and I kept my distance because I could see such intelligence out of its eyes, and the mind working, and just even the muscular power from this baby. Like, it's just a baby too. I was like, oh my gosh, like, what if we all recognize that amount of power within ourselves? Because it's easy to see it in a wild cat, right? It was undeniable. it demanded respect. It was a baby and it demanded respect. There was so much power, like this aura of power around this animal. And if you're seeing it through a plated glass at the zoo from a distance, you don't really get that sense. You're not feeling its vibration. But oh my gosh, when you're right up close to it, you're like, holy cow, I need to back away and respect this. And so if we can see that in ourselves, I think it's kind of like that Marianne Williamson's quote where she says, our greatest fear is recognizing how powerful we truly are. And so we were able to experience that unexpectedly on the retreat, which is amazing. And then we went to another beach where there were more people, but it was like the sky was so blue and the water was aqua green, and it was just like I just want to just bottle it up and bring it home. When I'm sitting in the basement and head down in front of my computer doing my work, like I want to remember the big sky. I want to remember the big ocean and the peace. And that was what I wanted all of us to experience coming away from the retreat, is bringing that with us. So the friendship and the being awed by nature. And then we also did meditation sessions where we went within and we kind of visualized various parts of our in our experience. And then we had sound healing. So we were on the beach and the palm trees are waving in the wind, and we had the crystal bowls going, and just a combination of all of that was absolutely incredible. We also we wanted to support the circular economy there. So we had a person who drove us who was a Bitcoiner, and then we ate at restaurants that were able to take Bitcoin and things like that. So supporting the circular economy, raising our vibration, building friendships, being awed by nature, all those things were part of the retreat.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds really amazing. And this was the first one that you had put together?
Yes, it was me and Amanda from Merida in Mexico, and we were so aligned in our vision. And she was on the ground, so she made the plans on the ground, and we promoted it to the Bitcoin and women, and we had such amazing responses that there are many women from all different parts of the world saying, "Hey, Tali, I want to do a retreat with you. Like, I want to help you coordinate where I am." So we're looking at different parts of the world. So eventually, everybody can't travel to Mexico. So we want to do it in Europe. We want to do it in Asia. We want to do it in Africa. So down the road, we're going to have different locations and hope to bring people together for a similar experience.
Wow, that's so amazing. So what brought you, like, how did you go from zero to, all right, I'm planning a retreat? I'm curious what that was like rationally, but also what fears you had to heal, work through, and maybe bravely face.
Well, it's funny you said that, because I kind of fell into it. The whole time I was struggling with the fear of my passport being lost, I was talking to God, and I was like, God, you brought me, you literally laid down the stones and brought me here. Why is this happening? So backing way up, I started the Orange Hatter podcast because I was traveling with Scott to share Bitcoin with other Bitcoiners, because it's such a great bridge builder and conversation opener, because he orange pilled me with Huddle Up. And so we started traveling to different meetups. Like, if they were willing to let us host the game night, we went. And all these different events that I went to, I realized that most of them have very few women. And when they did have women, they were girlfriends or partners of Bitcoiners who came, and they sat in the corner and looked on their phone. So I just recognized that they needed to hear the message about Bitcoin a different way. So Scott and I communicate very differently. I'm very story oriented. I'm very sensory. So when he says, "How was your day?" I gotta tell him, the taste of the food and the weather and the feeling of my skin. And like, I go into a lot of sensory descriptions, and he's like, "What is the point?" Right? He wants to get right to the point. So I just recognize that there's a difference in communication style. A lot of these Bitcoin events are conducted in a quite masculine way. They're very to the point. They're very technology focused. A lot of the people are very excited about technology development, but I don't think these women care until you tell them why they should care. And so I wanted to come at it from an emotional point of view. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna interview some people, start a podcast. And there was no like, let me plan this out, let me do some market research. It was just like, I know two people who's willing to talk to me, and I'm just going to call them and I'm going to record it. I'm just going to set up the podcast. So that's what I did. So I started the Orange Hatter podcast. And through that, I was able to talk to more and more uh, Bitcoiner women. And what I kept hearing from them was that they are very isolated where they are. So when they talk to me, we're connected via the internet, but where they are physically on the ground, they're very isolated. And that theme just came up over and over again. And so I thought, you know what? I think we should get together. I think I should just find a house, and we just, whoever can come, and we spend a weekend together. So that was the original idea. So I started to ask around and just, whoever I was talking, like, do you know a resort that we can rent that wouldn't be too expensive, that's affordable and people can come and just build friendships. Well, through those conversations, I was introduced to Amanda, and we talked, and she was like, Mexico is amazing. The Mayan area, like the whole peninsula, the Yucatan Peninsula is just very magical, and there's a really high energy here. And we just talked a lot about energy. I was like, okay, this sounds really amazing. And then we didn't really make any agreements, but I had to travel. So I said, okay, I'll talk to you after I get back. And I was, at the time, this is last November, going to El Salvador for the Adopting Bitcoin conference. And I didn't know that she was also going to be there. So we met up there. We're like, what? You're here and I'm here. And so we started talking, and DJ Valley was walking by, and she heard us talking about a retreat. She's like, wait, what are you guys talking about? So we're talking about maybe doing a women's retreat. And she goes, oh, that's cool. Let's go talk about it on stage. And I was like, wait, I don't have any dates. I don't have a location. Yeah. This is just a conversation. And she's like, no, let's go pitch it. So we went on stage and I mentioned it. And then afterwards, all these women came out. And we all sat down, we all gathered under this low tent, and a light rain started coming down. So we were kind of forced under the same tent. We sat in a circle, and it was absolutely amazing. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is what we need to do. So then after I got home, I looked at a calendar, picked a day. I'm like, let's just announce it. Let's just see who shows up. Let's just see what God has in store for us for this opportunity. So it kind of, everything played out without me intending to. I never in my wildest dream thought that I would be hosting a retreat, but it was the steps that were laid out, and I took them. And now, coming back from my first one, a lot of lessons learned. I will do my next retreat differently. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be really incredible. And honestly, there are a lot of other people also doing their retreats. Like, for example, there's one lady in my mastermind group. She's offering a retreat in El Salvador in February. I'll give you her website so you can put it in the show notes. But she's amazing. She's a yoga teacher. And she, like, when you meet her, she just, you know how some yogis, they say they're yoga teacher, but you're like, are you sure? Because you don't look very peaceful. But Allison is absolutely a yoga teacher. Like, when you talk to her, she embodies what she teaches. She's wonderful. And so she's hosting a retreat in February. I know of another couple who's thinking about hosting a retreat on the West Coast. So it's coming. People are recognizing the need for restoration and building deep friendships from spending time together in quiet. And, because conferences are really fun, and, like, talking late into the night in a loud lobby or a conference hall is really fun. But when you really want to build and you want to strengthen the bond, I think you need that quiet, you need that stillness. And so I think a lot of people are recognizing it.
Wow, what an amazing journey. I can really relate to the idea of just being together physically. For anybody that has not yet gone to a Bitcoin meetup, it is something that that's like the first step in getting out of just the digital realm of Bitcoin
Yeah.
and connecting with other Bitcoiners. Because I think when you do that and you see just how bright and amazing and powerful it is to connect with other people of this similar philosophy. I mean, you could sit with these people whom you've never met, and you could just talk with them for hours about, it doesn't have to even be Bitcoin, but
Yeah.
you have this really beautiful thing that is so deep and so overarching into so many other aspects of being a human being,
Mhm.
that it's just like there's something about being in another's physical presence. And I think this is a
Yeah.
going to become a very big trend for a lot of Bitcoiners, is starting to meet and interact and become good friends in the physical realm, instead of just the digital realm. It's so amazing, and I really applaud you for just following your intuition and being and following this feeling. It's like, gosh, I see around me these amazing connections. I feel these amazing connections, but it's missing somewhere, and I want
Mhm.
to offer that to other people. So all you did was you didn't even really, well, I'm sure you had a lot of fears, and it's just like, I don't know how this is going to work along the way. However, you still had this very powerful knowing and intuition that there was a need for this, and
Yeah.
uh, it wasn't like a connection to how it turned out as much as it was just like, let's just see who's interested. And sure enough,
Right.
there was a huge group of people interested. So how many women went on their retreat with you?
It ended up actually being quite a small group,
Mhm.
and I originally was really disappointed because it collided with the Madeira conference,
Mhm.
and spring break was later than. But we picked the dates because we wanted to avoid the Mexican heat. So anyway, it turned out to be a much smaller group than I had anticipated. But as things were unfolding on the ground, I realized that that was a blessing that God was protecting us and the group. It gave us enough flexibility to change our plans. Like when the chance encounter with the baby jaguar came up, if we had a large group, there was no possible way we could have taken advantage of that. But we had a small group, and then we also had some other incidents. Like we were driving toward, this is Mexico, so just keep that in mind. But we we were driving toward the beach house, and suddenly like this loud pop happened, and I was like, oh my gosh, we popped the tire. Well, minutes later, when we finally pulled to a safe stop, the driver came out of the car and he was shaking. And we're like, oh my God, what happened? What actually happened? Well, our brake line had broken. Like it just exploded. But the crazy thing was, as we were, like, he had no handbrake, no foot brake, nothing. Like he lost control of the car except for the steering wheel. But we came to a safe stop, and and as we were stopping, the car was braking. Like you could, it was like he was stepping on the brake. That's why I was so surprised when he said he had no brake. But like we were protected. I prayed blessing over the retreat for months before. And every day I was praying blessings over it. And I was praying for people's safety. And I was praying for people to be blessed by the experience and everything. And so I truly believe God's hand was on, like the angels protected us, because there was no reason for that car to have come to a stop where we stopped. We stopped at the perfect pullover place. Like you could not time it better. And it was, the brakes were being applied, but we had no brakes. So if we had had a
That's
large group, and then
crazy.
we ended up, yeah, and then we ended up taking an Uber to our beach house. But if we had had a large group of people, I can't even begin to imagine what we would have to deal with. But it was a small group. And so from beginning to end, I just felt like we were led by God, and his hands were on us, and he was protecting us. And even when we were at the beach, anytime we did any kind of energy work, I always prayed an energy protection bubble around all of us. Um, and I really truly believe that from beginning to end, we were in God's plan. However, a number of people showed up, whatever happened, it was all in God's plan. And now I'm coming away with more data. I'm coming away hopefully with a stronger character because I had to face some serious fears of my own. And the next retreat will be better. So yeah.
Yeah, that's super inspiring. I think that there are going to be a lot of people listening that will be very inspired to take the action toward the manifestation that they want, like you had mentioned at the beginning. What can you tell me about femininity that you learned about the sacred feminine on the retreat, if that came up at all?
The sacred feminine, like, explain that to me.
Well, so there are basically two aspects of everything: light, dark. I guess expansion and contraction, and then we have the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So the divine masculine, and I'll give you my definitions, and I don't want them to warp your own.
Right.
But the divine masculine, if you can imagine this retreat were to be a men's retreat, and if the men in the group were meditating, the feeling that you might get is the more masculine type energy is the energy of action, the energy of using your hands to physically move things around, or see. I think that, yeah, I suppose leadership in a more decentralized kind of fashion. So a less control type of leadership, but more of like a, if you can imagine, like the chief of a native tribe, someone who is very confident in who they are, and people naturally want to follow that confidence. And then contrasting that with the feeling of the sacred feminine, which is more about intuition, more about possibility, and the confidence that you might get from a woman who is a leader is in knowing that all of the possibilities that she offers for the group to take action upon are divine. They are ultimately in the group's best interest, and the clarity of her vision, there's nothing quite like it. So I don't know if that sparks anything for you, but that's kind of my understanding of it. And in the past few weeks especially, I feel like I'm learning more and more about the sacred feminine and kind of what it means, because for so long it hasn't really been a part of our society. The feminine has been more encouraged to become more masculine. It's been more about women, gaining clout in the workplace and working their way up the ranks and getting equal pay, and it hasn't been about honoring the sacred aspect of themselves. It's been more about bringing them in to be more like the patriarchy of the system that we kind of have today.
Okay, I see what you mean. So our focus during the retreat for the ladies was to shed. So we were all middle-aged and older. That's just the way it played out for us. And a lot of us have, I don't want to call it baggage, but just programming from the way we were raised, about what is right and wrong, what we should and should not do, and our responsibilities are dictated by societal expectations. And so a big part of our retreat is just shedding emotional scars, I guess you can call it. So one of the exercises that we did was we were on the beach, and like I mentioned, there were no people. And so it's not like we went to Ocean City or something here, where there's like the Ferris wheel and lots of restaurants and people walking around drinking beer and eating fries. Like none of that. It was us in the ocean. And our assignment was to go on the beach, and as you feel led to, pick up a shell and then just place something that you want to leave behind in the shell and then toss it back into the ocean, symbolic of what we want to leave behind so we can emerge stronger, emerge anew. And so that kind of stuff. And then also in our sharing circle, we went as far as people felt comfortable talking about things in the past. Like for women, managing our emotions actually not managing, processing our emotions is a really big thing. And when we get busy with life, we just keep pushing it down further and further. And you build up the pressure, and then you get sick from it, or you explode at unexpected times, that kind of stuff. So we really wanted the retreat to be a release. Like, we want to be awed, then we want to release, and we want to fill up. And so that's, in my mind, the way that we strengthen each other and our feminine energy was just honoring that there are things we need to shed so that more authentic feelings and more authentic self can come out louder. And it's not a one-time thing. It's going to be a repeated process, and it's like peeling an onion. And so the retreat did some of that, but when we go home, even for me, I'm still processing it and I'm still peeling back the onion. So in that way, we were um, we were validating each other's feelings, and we were encouraging each other to share what we don't want to keep. And in the process of building a relationship, hopefully support each other not only through the retreat but going forward into the future.
Wow, yeah, that's really beautiful. We've also done men's retreats in the decentralized consciousness community that Sama has hosted, and they've been awful, and it's been a very, very similar process. And there is something with the concept of going through this with other men. I don't know. I wonder if it's because if we as men or we as women, we go through similar emotional baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like kind of a good categorization for us to work on specific things together. But I think that ultimately what is going to happen is these two are going to merge, and the retreats will be both men and women. And like in our case, we've had some incredibly powerful meditations, feedback sessions, and sharing sessions with one another in the men's retreat. But there is also a lot of of things that we probably wouldn't be very comfortable going through with women present, and vice versa, because I think that there are a lot of traumas between the masculine and feminine, the feminine and the sacred masculine and feminine. So it's so I can definitely see the value in working through that with a group of women, for sure.
Yeah, we all agreed that if there had been men present, there would be things that we would feel very uncomfortable sharing, even just through words, because we would have to worry about how we will come across, how we'll be perceived, how we'll be judged, and how we'll be invalidated, even if the men don't intend for that to happen. And so we were really protective of the women's space. And I can absolutely understand that men need to do the same, because if there are things that only men experience that we don't experience, even just biologically, it's different, right? And so I think having the the safe space for men to share with men very, very openly and honestly. And I think that's the key, to be absolutely honest, because that's the only way to process things. And the same for women. And in the future, like you said, if we come together as co-ed retreats, that actually would just have a different dynamic. But I still believe that there's a need for just men and just women, just for that safe, I can say anything and the women will understand. Like, if we talk about our period and how much we have cramps, like, I don't expect men to understand that, right?
Right,
The reverse would be true. You guys have your own biological challenges and we have our own. And so just being really open about that. I think that safe space is really necessary. So.
Yeah, I believe that we are closing up a very long period of separation as a human race. And I think that there is no better representation of that separation than the separation of men and women, and believing one another to be such different creatures. I think that eventually we will respect those differences, but through those differences, we will feel and understand each other to be completely one, to understand that we aren't so different. And yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's a lot that we can work through and support each other with and understand one another as separate groups. And I really am excited and look forward to the day where we can come together and and we'll be able to support even one another even more powerfully because of our divinities and our divine gifts as men and women. So
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that we are more similar than different. And, like, for example, Allison's retreat, it's a yoga retreat and it's co-ed. And I think it's very beautiful for couples to go through that experience together. So, and then the one that I mentioned, the couple that's doing a retreat on the West Coast, that's also co-ed. And I think that's also a beautiful thing because it would be kind of sad if only one person in the partnership is interested in doing this kind of stuff, like to talk about the energy and the vibration, the frequency, and elevating consciousness and all that stuff. I think it will be actually it will be very lonely if it's only one person in the partnership talking about it. So I think couple retreats would play a really, really important role for sure. Yeah, going forward.
yeah. So how's Scott doing with all of this?
He was very, very supportive of me going on the women's retreat. He doesn't quite understand the energy side of it because I also I was doing stuff with trapped emotions. I don't know if you know about the emotion code, but that's
No,
all
I'm not
about.
familiar.
Oh, okay. So emotion code is about energy sitting in your body. Like the book that's called The Body Keeps the Score, it's along the same lines. It's your energy sits on your body anytime you have any kind of intense emotion. And if it sits on your body and um flowing like the Chinese, chi meridian, like you want the chi to be flowing. If there's stagnation, that's the stuck energy. And so emotion code talks about releasing the trapped emotions. So similar, I would draw the parallel to the acupuncturist releasing the stagnation chi, kind of like that. So, but we're using it, we're dispelling it not with a needle, but with a magnet. So when I go into stuff like that, energy healing, Reiki and that kind of stuff, Scott's like, okay, I have no idea what you're talking about. But in terms of, the emotional management that I was talking about before, to stay elevated with your emotions so that your frequency can stay high, like he's absolutely on par with that. So one of these days I like to drag him to
Cool.
one of those couples,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe Sama's thing, maybe Sama's
Mm-hmm.
retreat, so that he can
Mm-hmm.
learn more about what I'm talking about, because otherwise it is lonely when I get really excited about something, like especially about energy, and I tell him and he's looking at me like, yeah, I don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean that's the story of Bitcoiners too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, Gosh, we've covered a lot today. Is there anything else that you feel like discussing?
Oh, gosh. When I talk about energy, I can talk about it forever because I'm so
Yeah.
interested in energy healing. And what I have come to realize is almost every Bitcoiner woman, and I say women only because that's my podcast and I speak mostly with women on a deep, deep level. There are so many of them that are so in tune with this new way of looking at things. This looking at things from the frequency point of view, the vibration, the energy. And even at Bit Block Boom, that was one of the reasons why Monica and I started talking. She brought me into your group because I didn't know this group existed. But she was telling me that she interviewed with you, and then we were talking about energy. And it's so interesting that she and I were talking about the same principles, the same ideas, but she learned it from a different set of teachers than I learned. And I have never heard of her teacher. She's never heard of my teachers, but we were basically saying the same thing. And it's so amazing. But but it's kind of like, I'm in Kentucky, I'm in the Bible Belt. I have to be really careful who I talk about this stuff with, because most people here are Christian. And so it's very liberating to go to a Bitcoin event and find someone or people, a group of people who I can be so open in discussing this. And there are more of us out there, I think, than we realize. And so, yeah, I find that to be very encouraging. I wanted to put that out there, because it is, I don't know, for some locations harder to talk about than others. But there are many of us. So wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, very inspiring. So how can people get in touch with you? You've got a lot of projects going on. Tell them about the podcast and your upcoming, I guess, retreat for next year.
Yeah. So orangehatter.com is the best way to just get the information. Orange Hatter. Somebody wrote me and said, "Why do you hate orange?" I said, "No, it's not Orange Hater. It's Orange Hatter." It's like the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland. Orangehatter.com. And I have my podcast. I wrapped up season 1 with the 100th episode. So season 2, I haven't released yet. I'll just keep an eye out. I have a Monday night reading group that is going on every single week, except for the holiday weeks. And we're going through Lynn Alden's Broken Money right now, chapter by chapter. But even if you haven't read it, come and just meet us. It's every Monday night. It's virtual. Send me an email, tali@orangehatter.com, and I'll give you the Telegram link. And the reason we keep it private is because we had some scammers come in, and that was really annoying. So now it's private, but just shoot me an email. And it's for women. We wanted to have a safe space. Sorry, men. So that I have that. I have a mastermind group that's going on right now for women who are in the Bitcoin space with a business. And we have very unique challenges, right? As Bitcoiners and as women and as entrepreneurs. So we have a group that meets every week as well. And I do have another group that is scheduled to kick off in June. If anybody wants to join, just send me an email. And then there's another one that I was toying with. It's called the Intention Experiment. Have you heard of the Intention Experiment by Lynn McTaggart?
Nope, I have not.
Okay, so she wrote her very first book, Intention Experiment. I think it was like 15, 20 years ago. And she started gathering information from quantum physicists about, like, with scientific evidence about the power of intention, like the power of your thought energy. And so I decided to do my own intention experiment a few months back. It's the rice experiment. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but you basically put cooked rice in 3 jars, and you label 1 jar love, you label 1 jar hate, and you label 1 jar ignore. And you're supposed to, so the study was conducted at a university, and the research assistants were supposed to walk by the love jar every single day and send in love thoughts. You're so beautiful. You're amazing. I love you. The hate jar, you're supposed to send in hate thoughts. You're so stupid. You're ugly. You're worthless. I hate you so much. And then the ignore jar, they're supposed to completely ignore. And after, I think the experiment lasted 2 weeks or something, and they opened up the jars, and the one with love was completely fine. It's still just white cooked rice. The one with the hate jar was covered with black mold. And then the one ignored was somewhere in between. So I heard about this experiment. I'm like, I'm going to do my own experiment. So I put out 3 bowls of rice, love, hate, ignore. And it was right before I went on a trip. And so when I was on a trip, I was away for 4 days. I was sending love thoughts, hate thoughts, and I ignored the other one. And it was only like 10 seconds a day. When I remembered, I was like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I hate you, like that. And when I came back 4 days later, I have pictures, which I can show you later, but it's absolutely incredible. The one that was hated on had orange mold on it, because I didn't have cooked rice. I had just uncooked rice, so it molded differently. So it was like this dark orange mold. And then the love one was basically the same as before, and the ignore was somewhere in between. And that's remote. That's 10 seconds a day, and it was only for 4 days. And I was like, what in the world? Right? So how much time do we spend hating on something? Like, if we hate the fiat system, guess what we're doing? We're sending it energy. thoughts are energy, right? So anyway, so I wanted to kind of copy that, but wanted to bring it to the Bitcoin space. And on my website, you can see it under intention experiment. And I had an idea to do like a global thing, like at the same time, everybody signs on and we just think of something that would move the needle for Bitcoin adoption. Well, I wasn't able to, and I was talking to all these leaders in the industry and just like, what do you think we should intend for, and how do we, what is one thing that's measurable, that we can track, that we can put our intention behind, right? I wasn't able to get a straight answer from anyone because everybody said something different. So I'm like, okay, you know what? We were in Yucatan and we were on the higher part of the pyramid. I'm like, okay, we're just gonna send good thoughts, and we literally stood on the ledge and we just sent good intentions out to Bitcoin adoption and Bitcoin ecosystem in general. So I can't really measure that. But as it evolves, as I get more information, I would like to be able to pick something that we can really back by sending our thought energy toward, that will help, in whatever way we think is most helpful. So that's a experiment that I'm doing myself. So if anybody wants to participate or want to give me ideas, send me an email. So that's the intention experiment.
Wow, yeah, that's a really amazing idea. And my recommendation for you is just to meditate on it, just to feel within yourself and try to find that intention. My experience with flow tells me that you probably won't know until like the actual time comes. You might have some ideas, you might have some visions for some possibilities, but the less that you can attach to an outcome now and allow that intention to come through in flow, in the moment, and perhaps the intention will change a few times throughout the meditation. So I would, don't worry too much about finding it, because really first of all, time doesn't exist. So it's already been decided. And the more that you can, the more that you can just tune into that and allow it to be pure, like the better the outcome will be. So I'm sure that there are tons of people in the community that would love to join you for that, myself included. So I really look forward to that.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be really cool.
All right, Tali. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This was an amazing conversation. We're going to have to do it again for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully I'll see you in person one of these days.
I know. I've been in, and like I said earlier, with the, with going to a meetup and feeling that energy of just being in the physical presence of other people.
Yeah.
And there's nothing quite like it. So I can only imagine then you move from a group of 10 people to like 10,000 or however big the conference is. I don't know, but just how incredible that would be. Because, and I've heard too, that it's not even necessarily like the lectures or the events. It's just going and hanging out with people afterwards that you really get the most value. It's just a ton of fun. So I can't wait. And I want to do the same for spiritual Bitcoiners as well. I think that we can really do some amazing things.
Yeah, exactly.
So thanks for your inspiration today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. That was really fun.